Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for Tobot Mini, Invincible, Sargeant Justice, and Speed. And first off, the boxes for these are really cool. They really stand out. Too bad you can't find them on shelves in stores, but they have a really cool animated aesthetic to them, and they just really pop. So really awesome decorations on these. And I thought maybe the directions would look special too. The cover has that animated style to it, but inside you see is just a typical Tobot directions. They all look like this. Alright, let's start with the size comparison. So you can see the Tobot minifigures are smaller than a deluxe figure. So that's unfortunate. It'd be good if these figures scaled up just a little bit and were a little bit bigger than Generations or deluxe figures. And then Invincible or Great Admiral is smaller than a leader class Transformer, unfortunately. It would be great if he was actually the same size as Overlord, since they basically have kind of a similar transformation as Great Admiral is kind of a duocon too. One issue I have with these old Tobot figures is they're just too big, so I thought maybe having the minifigures would be nice. But I actually wish there was something right in between these two scales. Like, this guy is still too giant. If he was exactly in between this minifigure and this one, that would probably be a perfect size for this figure. So real fast, Sargeant Justice has no head articulation. He's got ball joint shoulders, and then he's got pivot at the elbow, which goes less than 90 degrees, and then he has no bicep swivel. He does have ball joint hips, which allow him to kick all the way forward and all the way back if this wasn't in the way. And then he's got less than 90 degrees, oh, actually no, 90 degrees on the knee. So that's all for his articulation. His head does not rotate at all, unlike the original figure, unfortunately. So his articulation is pretty limited. The original figure also had bicep swivels that this guy doesn't have. But he's looking pretty good. It's pretty sharp. He's missing a lot of paint application, so he looks pretty plain, but he's also very small. If this guy had deluxe Transformer articulation, this would be an amazing figure, but he'd have to be a little bit bigger for that, because there's just not a lot of room for extra joints. So his transformation is really simple. You just fold down the dog head, and then you fold the arms up, and then the shoulders compress into the chest, and then you have this flap that covers the head, and then the 2 feet just peg together, and then the feet will pivot up, and then you use this part on the back, so you collapse the legs, and then this part on the back will just finish out the car mode, and there you go. So that's really awesome looking car mode still. Same transformation as the deluxe size figure pretty much. Okay, Speed has kind of the same issues. No head articulation. He's got 360 on the shoulder here, and he's got outward on the shoulder, which is nice. He does have an elbow joint, but no bicep swivel, which is kind of important, but the original figure didn't either. And then he does have a great forward kick, backward kick. He does have ball joint hips, so he can get a good outward kick too. And then he does have like this little knee joint, which helps with articulation, but lack of head articulation is really disappointing. So to transform him, you just fold up these legs into his thighs. You're going to open up this front car section. This back section is just going to fold up over his head. And then these shoulders, you're going to straighten out the arms to form the front of the car, or the side lights of the car, the side doors. And then you unclip his pelvis. You're going to rotate that 180 degrees. And then get his arms into position. So they tab into place here. And then there's little slots here where they also tab in. So it's pretty secure connection, and it's nice and clean. And then his legs have like this bending joint in the middle of the thigh. and that's all just going to clip together here. You just have to press this so it locks into place, and then everything will clip nice and neat, very clean transformation, and again missing a few paint apps, but looking pretty good for the size. And then finally we have Invincible, or Great Admiral, which is a figure that I really enjoyed, but he was just too large for my collection, so I ended up selling him. So Great Admiral has no head articulation. His shoulders are a bit limited. This is also kind of an elbow joint, but it's kind of more of a shoulder to point the arms forward and point them back down. He does have a bicep swivel, or really kind of a forearm swivel. You can kind of almost get a rotating joint here, but not really. And this connection to the arm can be a little bit loose. He also has, for accessories, he has the shield, which is combined with the tank turret, and that just pegs into a little hole on his forearm right here. And then he also has this sword, which has been shrunk so much that it's actually kind of delicate. It's pretty flimsy. This would definitely be something a kid would easily break. But the aesthetic on this guy is really great. These are 3 of my favorite Tobots, and I really did enjoy Speed, but he was just too big for my collection, just like Invincible here. So, like the original figure, he does not have shoulder rotation, which is a big missing point of articulation, and his head still does not rotate. He does have a forward kick, and his hips are now on ball joints, which is a little bit loose feeling for a figure this size, because he's a fairly good size. And then he doesn't have any thigh swivel. He does have knees, but his legs can only kick about that far forward, so the knees don't really add very much. And that's about it for this guy's articulation. His thumbs don't pose, and neither do his fingers in this mode. So overall, really great looking figure. They did make one little change where this cockpit section was actually pegged onto his back too, where this was just a huge backpack. They cleaned him up by just giving him this nice shell back here. So I do appreciate that they made that change. It does look better to have all this kibble down here at his legs. But overall, really great looking figure. I think he'd scale really good with Titan class figures. So he transforms pretty simply. You just take off the shield, you're going to take out the turret, and then you take out the sword, and that's going to be pegged into the shield. And then you just set that aside, and now you just rip off all the blue parts. So that's these 2 giant arms here, and then there's these feet at the bottom. And then you have this little decorative piece behind his head, a headdress. And this is actually pretty similar to the original Great Admiral figure, except for these arms don't fold down, and then these can't slide up. But otherwise, if these arms could fold down and this could slide up, you would have the original Great Admiral figure. So you peg the 2 legs together, you're going to slide these engine boosters out, and then you fold the head all the way up, and then the dragon component doesn't detach, but you fold the neck forward and fold this up, and then that's going to rotate into place at the front of the ship. And then this back panel just pegs into place here, and then these, actually the arms, and this has a habit of popping off because it's just on this friction clip right here, so it's not really secure there. So first you have to actually rotate the arms down and into place, and there's a double joint at the shoulder on this little white armature. Okay, now that's in place. Now you want to fold this back panel up, and then you have the same issue as the original figure, as his head is just staring up into space while he's cruising around. And then you take the shield panel, and this just pegs into the bottom to complete this space shuttle mode, which is looking pretty good. Missing definitely some of the paint apps, the yellow touches and the whites that made the original figure really cool. But for a shrunk down version, this is a really good representation of this figure. And then for Tank Guy, you just take all the little bits. So these were the feet bits. You just rotate the toes into place, and then you're just going to connect these two bits together, and that's going to make part of the tank. And then for the arms, you just rotate these little panels to the front of the tank, and then you slide them back, and then you rotate the forearm into the shoulder so that the treads are lined up. And then you're going to connect basically the tank engine here. Just connects on these little clips. And then you just peg everything together, and then you can just slot this front section back to lock everything in place. You put the turret here, and you've got a really nice looking tank. And then you just take that head crest, and it's actually going to go here. And here's all the mini Tobots together. They make a really good looking set, so they're very similar to the deluxe versions. And then they scale really well with deluxe Transformers, because this is almost the same size. So it's weird that these cars are pretty much the same size, but this robot is a little bit smaller and less bulky than a deluxe figure. But overall, these figures are pretty fun, especially if you don't have the room for full-size Tobot figures. And these two were $14 on Amazon, and this set was about $42, which is a little expensive, but I think it's worth it if you don't want to get the full-size versions because they're too large and they just don't scale with anything. The quality on these figures feels pretty good. It's not quite a 10. I feel like some of the parts could definitely break, or they just pop off during transformation. So it's probably something more of an 8. They do feel quite good though. So if you're interested in owning these figures, you can pick them up on Amazon, and I recommend them.